We've said it before, we'll say it again. Apple is behind in AI, this time with video.
Welcome to the All Future podcast, where we talk all things tech, AI, Apple Vision, sometimes other subjects like free will. If we get there.
The end of humanity, you never know. Yeah.
Big things. Welcome to this podcast. Thank you for subscribing if you have already. If you haven't, consider subscribing to get more videos like this. And today we're talking about a really interesting new partnership. And there's a full video demoing this. Adobe is partnering with OpenAI.
Yes, and a couple more people too.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's pretty neat. The headline here is that Adobe Premiere, their video editing software, is going to start building in generative AI models. Every random video editor in the world can start adding fake AI things into their videos, or getting rid of objects, adding new objects, changing backgrounds, every single thing you could imagine you could do with AI. Hitting a few hot button issues here, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple things here. There is the general conversation about the ethics of AI content, especially in video, which is, and up until now, the thing that people have considered maybe more reliable than still images, although there have obviously been faked videos for a very, very, very long time. There is the question of, is this going to affect Apple and their thinking of AI, specifically in the apps that they develop, like Final Cut? And I think there is the larger kind of question here of, does Apple even care about this kind of AI? So that's where we're at. You've seen this demo video, right? Pretty cool. You're into it?
Yeah, very cool. I think at times I can tell, like,
absolutely, yeah.
they're generating extra frames, or they're filling in a gap. It might be because they're showing you the timeline and showing this is what we filled in, and then you watch the cursor go, and then it's like, okay, here's the AI part. But it's like, oh, yeah, that face doesn't look real anymore.
Yeah, and you're definitely looking for it, and this is a very much a alpha release kind of thing. Yeah, this is not even available right now. Yeah, this is like very nebulous. In the future, this is what they're building in. The near future, but still it's not out yet.
Yeah, I think they said later this year. Yeah. But we might as well break down everything that it's going to be able to do.
Sure.
So they demoed generation, which is pretty obvious, I think. And then they demoed augmenting certain shots. So the example they gave, it was like a briefcase full of diamonds. And then they select it and add diamonds. And it looks like, that one looks great. It looks like the briefcase is now full of diamonds. They do screen replacement, and then subtraction, I think, might be one of the biggest ones. This is something that's obviously been a thing, and we've seen it like in Photoshop and stuff. But the way they presented it is like, you could be on a set somewhere, and if there's a copyrighted logo or a street sign you don't want or something, you just take the shot anyway, and then you just generatively subtract that.
There are entire companies out there right now to do this, and they're doing it the old school way, where they're kind of rotoscoping and replacing objects or removing objects. But almost every single professionally made video content out there, and by professional, I guess from a movie studio or a production house making a commercial or something like that, has some kind of object removal in it. Whether it's logos, an unwanted sign in the background, changing the sky, something like that. This is, I think, the feature that's going to get a lot of people excited about this thing, the ability to just get rid of stuff, because it can do that so much more convincingly than adding in new stuff. So it's very cool. The other interesting thing I think about this is that it's not just using Adobe's AI model. Adobe has Firefly, which is currently in Photoshop. You can use that right now. And that's their generative AI. But they're also partnering with Runway, which is the AI generating video system that you can use right now. So you can go on Runway right now, and it's a text to video system. So you can type in whatever and it makes a video file of it. Pika, another AI video thing. And Sora, which is OpenAI's video generation, which had like kind of the most impressive demos where it's, fully making these scenes from AI.
Yeah. So
it's kind of a cool thing in that, and what we've talked about a lot here is the competition between AI models is going to increase and continue to increase. And this is, we're seeing this where Adobe's kind of like, oh, we'll let you choose, and then you can use different ones for different situations. And I imagine, like with most things, as time goes on, certain AI models are going to get better at certain things. So it's cool that they're allowing the choice here.
Yeah, it'll be probably in the future, it's just going to be the same as like choosing one effect over another, downloading this third-party effect, this third-party LUT pack or whatever, and using that one instead of the built-in one. I'd love to see that integrated in that way. It's that's how they demo it here. Like you're choosing one of the AI
it's
models.
like a drop down, and you just like pick it. Yeah.
And it seems like that's probably where it's going to get. But yeah, I'm curious to see where this gets across other software. Like, is this Adobe exclusive because they're partnering with these companies? Or is this going to be like you can just import that into whatever your video software is?
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be, and there's already plugins out there that are like that, where there's a kind of a standalone version of it you can use, but you can also build it into the app. So it just makes it a little easier to use. So that's very cool. Something else they kind of have talk about, they actually and this is a short video, it's like maybe 2 minutes, and they mentioned this twice, is adding the metadata into it so that you know a portion of the video was AI generated. This is, I think, is one, it's going to become more and more a requirement. I imagine it's going to become a legal requirement pretty soon. I think it also is maybe a way to kind of head off some negative press from it from, say, creatives who are like, especially if you look at this is, like I mentioned earlier, there's VFX houses that specialize in this stuff. I'm sure what it's eventually going to do is really replace kind of full CGI modeling in your videos, make almost anything, right? Yeah. And that's 100% going to put VFX houses out of the business. Being able to say, oh, this is AI, it allows, at least they can maintain some kind of moral high ground with it a little bit. We've actually already seen this with YouTube as well. Now makes you, if you have realistically altered video content in your video, you have to tag that. And so there's some kind of disclaimer on it. Here's what I will say. It's incredibly easy to remove metadata and digital watermarking from files. Yeah. Right? So it's cool that this is going to be built in, but it might be as simple as just doing a screen recording of the video you just made, and it immediately strips out a bunch of the digital watermarking and metadata stuff. Yeah, we're going to have fully AI generated video that's going to look real very soon.
Yeah, and they even show some of that, like they have their A roll and then they drop a B roll, like a blank B roll thing, type in a text prompt, and it gives you that. So it's the same as you could do. You could just go to the website and then drop that in, but this is just being built into the thing. But I will say, so I have a little bit of a, I don't know, call me crazy with this. You're crazy. But it's funny to me to have this super advanced thing and then have just the look of the Premiere timeline. Now, I'm fully, when I was a Final Cut, what was it, 7?
7 was the last classic Final Cut.
Yeah. I was a Final Cut 7 user, so when they moved to 10, I switched to Premiere. And I fully boycotted Final Cut 10 for a long time. And now I'm back. And I love Final Cut. I think it's great, especially for like YouTube type of video creation. So it's just funny to me. It seems like it looks kind of like it's an outdated program. And it is. It's an updated, very old designed program. Yeah. And then you're throwing this brand new, crazy future technology onto that old interface. Right.
I mean, all of Adobe stuff looks insane. It's bloated. It's complicated. There's all these text menus everywhere. But definitely in Premiere and After Effects, it looks crazy. Not the most user-friendly. Bringing it to Apple, since you brought it up, is this something they need to put in Final Cut? And will they?
I think they will, and it'll have to be their own version. Because I think they do a good job of building in things that are actually really good eventually. Like all the audio tools I've discussed, like voice isolation.
Which is an AI kind of feature. Like Apple called it machine learning, but voice isolation is an AI pulling out a voice from a crowded or noise or whatever, and works remarkably well. Like voice isolation is wild.
Yeah. It could be so loud around us right now.
We're actually next to a jet engine. You can't even hear it. But it would actually, a jet engine would probably pull that out pretty easy because it's all one frequency and it'd be able to pull it down. So there's cool AI stuff already in Final Cut. They just don't call it that.
Yeah. So I think though, the way we'd see it integrated, it might be their own thing. Like it's not Pika that you're choosing. You can integrate Pika if you want, or OpenAI, Sora, whatever. But ultimately, you're probably just going to be using Apple's version of this long term, which gets us to where they're working out on AI stuff. So we know they're possibly working on some AI image generation because they're partnered with Shutterstock now. That could just be for training things with photos and whatnot, but it may be on the generation side of things. And that could be the way that they actually try to take this on, is do it themselves, but then integrate it so far into the program that you don't think about what AI tool you're using. It's just like, this is the Final Cut thing that replaces the background here.
Ryan, I got a visual aid.
Oh, yes.
I got a visual aid today. I went to the museum.
Is this your own personal museum of Apple products?
The museum, aka the storage boxes in my basement. Ryan, what is this, buddy?
Is that a 4th generation?
This is a 4th generation. I was just looking for iPod, but yeah. Yes, it is a 4th generation.
It's an iPod.
It is a 4th generation iPod. Ryan, who made this?
I actually don't know. I would guess.
Well, in general, Apple. You could say
Foxconn.
That, right? Yeah, sure, all kind of stuff like
Apple,
that.
yeah.
Ryan, for the viewers at home, tell me what logo is on the back of this.
There's an HP logo right there.
HP, Hewlett Packard. I don't know if you know this, that HP sold iPods.
Really?
Yes. And the reason that they did this is whatever, like 2004, 2005, something like that, is that at the time, HP had access to storefronts that Apple did not. So places like Walmart, Radio Shack, think of electronic places at Circuit City, something like that, electronics places in 2004. So Apple specifically partnered with HP so that this product could grow and keep going and stay alive. It also let them put iTunes onto more Windows machines because when they sold this, they had a deal with HP that their stuff would come with iTunes instead of Windows Media Player. So Apple does have kind of a history, and the end of the story is that they kind of screwed over HP because they got locked into being on HP machines for like 5 years or something like that, and then Apple just released the 5th generation iPod, and no one bought HP iPods anymore. But I think Apple does have a history of partnering with companies when they see they have a gap and they need to catch up. We see this a little bit, the rumor that Apple's going to partner with Gemini for kind of large language model stuff on the iPhone. So if they want Final Cut to stay relevant, I don't know if Apple's going to be able to have video generative stuff ready anytime soon, or if they're even interested in building that themselves. They might go this plugin route, right? Whatever you want to call this thing, partnership, whatever, so they can just like partner with another company and put that stuff in the Final Cut. I think the bigger question here, though, is that does Apple even want to do this? And I'm not sure. On the image the generative side for still images or even lower scale video stuff, so stuff you can do mobile on the iPhone, that user base is huge, and I think there's going to be a lot of people there.
Yeah.
What is the how much money does Final Cut and these kind of pro creative apps really make Apple?
It's true, because they are, on the consumer side, it's really nice because you pay once. It's not a subscription.
Yeah.
For me, it keeps me into buying like whatever their new faster processor is every couple years.
Right. That's their theory, right? Is that, we're going to get someone to buy Final Cut and they'll keep buying Macs to run Final Cut.
But I'm still a very select person that's using Final Cut.
Here's a crazy thing to think about. You're a very select person that's using a Mac at all because computers just are dwarfed by every other consumer electronics sales. The 2023 revenue for Macs for Apple, 7% of their total revenue. And of that 7%, 90% were MacBook Airs. So it might be general MacBooks. Don't quote me on that one, but MacBooks make up 90% of Mac sales. Mac sales make up 7% of total Apple revenue.
Wow.
And then how many of that were people that bought Final Cut? Even though Final Cut is it's one of the top apps on the Mac App Store, but what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like you're talking a percentage of a percentage of a percentage, right? So there was a time when Apple was known as kind of the creative computer company. And if you were a professional creative, you had a Mac.
Yeah,
which is still true for a lot of people, but more because of habit and not because of necessity anymore. And if you look at even in Final Cut, you talked earlier about how you left Final Cut when, they switched from 7 to 10. A lot of people did that. That gave room for Adobe to kind of blow up. Premiere wasn't nearly as popular back then as it is now. If you look on the high-end side, Avid's still very popular video editing software for kind of, super high-end movies and stuff like that. You also have things like DaVinci, which is free. So, if you're editing on a Windows machine, why wouldn't you just get DaVinci for free, right? Like
instead of paying monthly.
Yeah, or DaVinci also works on the Mac too. So instead of paying $300 for Final Cut or whatever, I think there's at some point Apple's gonna, like they've done with a lot of their creative apps, move on from this at some point. I also think there's that use case of the YouTuber that uses Final Cut to cut their videos is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That's what kind of drove Final Cut and made Final Cut 10 as popular as it is now, was the kind of at-home creator and the explosion of that. And that I feel like is also going to start going by the wayside as people coming into video content creation now are using things like CapCut, all these kind of more mobile-based things. You can also look at what is popular for this type of creator that's using Final Cut. It's a lot of stuff. It's much more raw now. It's much less editing. It's less effects intensive. All this kind of stuff. It has this more immediate, naturalistic style of filmmaking. I'm gonna use the filmmaking term loosely for TikTok, but you get what I'm saying, right? You're recording things on video.
Yeah.
I don't know if Apple needs this stuff at all, I guess. Or if they do need it, maybe they integrate it at a more lower level and not into... It'll get thrown into Final Cut, but really it's for people on their phones or something. They're mobile video editing.
Yeah, I wonder what the stats are of people like using iMovie on iPad and iPhone, right? There's an iPhone iMovie app.
iPhone,
I wonder what the stats are there, because, maybe is there a drive for them, like, to integrate it all the way down to iMovie and then it comes to Final Cut? Because that was kind of what happened with Final Cut 10.
Yeah.
They had iMovie. It was like this super user-friendly thing. And then they made Final Cut more like that. So all the professionals are like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But they might do the same kind of thing where these AI generative features come to the basic Apple iMovie phone app that I think comes installed on your phone.
You can certainly get it for free.
I don't know if it's
free. Like pre-installed, but it's free for anyone who gets an iPhone.
And then it works its way back up.
Which has happened several times. There's several features that were on iMovie before they were on Final Cut. So that's a kind of common thing for Apple to do.
Yeah, definitely. So do you use Final Cut right now?
I do. I don't edit as many videos as I used to these days, but when I do, I still open Final Cut.
Yeah. So if these features came and they're good, you can extend the length of a clip and it looks totally real. You can remove background in seconds, all of that stuff, and you can't do it in Final Cut. Would you switch to Premiere?
If I need to, maybe. I will say, you know what? Something I did do is that I have not used Photoshop that often. I use a Affinity Photo, which you pay for it
once,
$20 or $30 or whatever it is once, and then you don't have to pay for it again. Whereas Photoshop's part of the Creative Cloud system, and you have the subscription. I actually still have the subscription, so I'm not really saving any money at all. But I prefer the ease of using Affinity. But what Affinity doesn't have is generative fill that Photoshop does have. And so there's certain times when I'm like, I open up Photoshop specifically for generative fill, and I can see myself maybe using Premiere for a scene where I need AI for some reason. And it's akin to, a lot of people do this already. They use After Effects, which is new motion, a visual effects kind of program, and they do something in there and round trip it into Final Cut. So they're Final Cut editors, but they use After Effects for motion graphics or whatever. So I could see people maybe using Premiere for some of the AI features and then bringing another Final Cut.
That's probably what I would do.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have quite the same ease of just like take the clip,
doing
extend
it all in the thing, right? Well, then a lot of these things though are probably gonna have some kind of standalone version of them. It's not like Sora's only going to be inside Premiere. They're going to have some kind of other thing. But it's just nice to have it integrated in the footage and work really well and not have to worry about round tripping or something like that. So I'm going to try it. I'll say that. And I guess the stuff I make right now doesn't really require a lot of AI or effects, But maybe if I had this, I don't know, maybe I'll make a Spider-Man movie or something.
That's true. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, this brings us all to WWDC. We'll see what Apple's gonna do. I think you might be right, and I don't want you to be right, but I think you might be right that they end up just kind of leaving their at least in-house creative apps behind, and they're supporting AI and they're supporting all of these apps, and they still partner and work with developers. But you're right, Mac sales are becoming less of their overall thing, and a lot of the creative apps are what would have driven sales in the past and what did drive sales. It's what got me excited to get a Mac back in the day. So, this could all change because of this stuff, and this OpenAI partnership with Adobe could be a big thing. That kind of wipes out Apple, and they just decide not to compete, at least in that specific zone.
They've already done that. I don't know if you remember the program Aperture, which was Apple's equivalent to Lightroom.
Yeah.
They just pulled a plug on it one day. They're like, we're not going to have this anymore. So there are only two creative, like high-end creative software they still make. They make Logic on the music side and Final Cut on the video side. And it's been years that people have rumored that they're going to pull the plug on this.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to the Final Cut team in like 2017. The reason I was talking was they're very interested in YouTube video creation. So they brought me out to Apple campus, and we got to give this presentation and talk to the team out there. Their opening thing was, don't worry, we're not killing Final Cut. And this is 2017. There was already like rumors of it.
Yeah.
So, but I think as time goes on, well, especially as time goes on, you're not even going to need video editing software at all, right? You're going to be able to just load random footage, and an AI is going to be able to cut it for you. And you look at stuff like CapCut does already, which is a free program with some add-ons and things you can get for it. It does everything you could want in a video editor. Super easy, super cheap. AIs it, does all the motion graphics, does all this kind of stuff. Why do I need to pay $300, you know?
Yeah.
But I've been wrong about many things in my life, so maybe this is one of them, and Final Cut will continue for a very, very, very long time.
I hope so.